Two more defensive transfer portal additions for the University of Tennessee, and one could be a massive one.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Wednesday morning Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Cain, host of Locked On Vols, member of the VolQuest.com team, and appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch here this morning. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day, and it's the number one sports podcasting network available. Today's episode is presented by the good people over at FanDuel Sportsbook, where the college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get in to that action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff boost every game day. That's over at FanDuel. Got a fun show coming up. A couple of defensive transfer portal commits that we're going to discuss here on the show. One was, I guess it was, get days mixed up. I guess it was Monday night. The other one was Tuesday morning. And so that's exciting. Defensive roster breakdown, who's coming, who's going, who's been retained, kind of what's each position group look like in terms of the numbers. That's coming up in segment 2. And a question that we'll ponder towards the end of the show. I understand there's angst, I understand there's frustration, but should we give Josh Heupel the benefit of the doubt when it comes to quarterbacks? I think we should, and I'll explain coming up later on in the show. All right, so Tennessee's first transfer portal addition we're going to speak on is Jordan Norman, the first of two. Jordan Norman, the Tulane edge, committed to Tennessee on Monday night, and it was followed up by Michigan safety TJ Metcalf, who committed to Tennessee like at 8:30 in the morning on I guess about 8:45 in the morning on Tuesday morning. First, let's go with Norman. I like Norman. I think this is an underrated get. You look at his transfer portal ranking; it's not very high. Okay. But this is a guy that is, sound like Chris Collinsworth, this is a guy that is 6'4", 250 pounds, very productive at the group of 5 level, with Tulane. 28 tackles, career high this past year. 8 TFLs, career high this past year. 6 sacks, career high this past year. Again, he had 25 tackles, 4 TFLs, 2.5 sacks in 2024 with South Alabama, and as a freshman in just 3 games, redshirt freshman, I guess, or his redshirt year in 2023 with South Alabama, he had a sack and a half as well. He was a 3-star rated prospect coming out of high school. That's primarily why he landed at Tulane. Career high 447 snaps as a redshirt sophomore last year, Pro Football Focus grade of about 71.9. Here's what I like: durability, able to stay on the field a lot, but again, you're not going to be asked to do that here at Tennessee because of the big rotation up front. Norman recorded at least 20 snaps in every game this season and 30-plus snaps in 9 games. So a guy that's durable, that can stay out there and do what needs to be done on the defensive line. He's explosive. I think he's big, very athletic, good twitch off the end. And when you're looking at the defensive end spots, those bigger body guys, I think Jordan Norman kind of fits that to a T. So that was kind of how the recent run of commits. Again, Tennessee's now up to 12, I think. That's Jordan Norman, a guy that visited campus last weekend and really kind of been on commitment watch there the last couple of days, that being the edge from Tulane in Jordan Norman. On Tuesday morning, it was TJ Metcalf, another one that's pretty much, I don't want to call him a silent commit, but kind of been waiting around for him to announce, or waiting around for the agency to tell a national reporter, because that's how things work nowadays, that he is committed to Tennessee, because that one had been trending Tennessee for heavily the last couple of days. Safety from Michigan. Tennessee obviously has a big-time need at safety, and he played a lot of star, however, for Michigan in 2025. 6'1", 200 pounds. He was honorable mention all Big Ten this past year. 58 tackles, 2.5 TFLs, 1 interception across 718 snaps. So a guy that played a ton of snaps for the Wolverines. In coverage, Metcalf was targeted 43 times and gave up 29 receptions for 296 yards and 1 touchdown. He also had 2 pass breakups. That was his first year in Michigan. Prior to being in Ann Arbor, he signed out of high school to go to Arkansas. He was a 3-star rated prospect, played the 2023 and 2024 seasons for the Hogs. He combined to go nearly 900 snaps in Fayetteville. 1 year, 2024, obviously when he was a starter, he played 730 snaps for Arkansas. 72 tackles, a forced fumble over those 2 years, and he'll have 1 year of eligibility remaining. So Metcalf is a guy that I remember coming out of high school. He has a brother, Tevis Metcalf, that it would not shock me if Tennessee was able to get on campus for a visit. He was later this week whenever the dead period lifts. That would be tomorrow. He was also at Michigan, and I remember these two guys camping at Tennessee way back in the day. 2020, 2021, stuff like that. These guys were coming to prospect camps at the University of Tennessee, and I remember those guys from the recruiting circles. But obviously from Fayetteville to Ann Arbor, and TJ is a volunteer. Maybe Tevis, his brother, could follow him. We will break that down if that time comes. Later on in the week. But I like this commit for sure for TJ Metcalf. Again, I think he's a gamer. I think he's a guy that can go out there and do a whole lot. You look at the defensive backfield, and we'll have more on this coming up in segment number 2, but look at the defensive backfield that has already added Quay Moss, who's going to be the star-type player, who's already added Kayin Lee, who has starting experience at Auburn at the corner position. DeJuan Lane, a safety from Penn State's already in this group. So you add in TJ Metcalf, and I like the collection of talent that Anthony Poindexter and Jim Knowles have assimilated for the back end, or have assembled for the back end of the defense. I think this is pretty solid. And of course, you look at where Tennessee was at safety this past year. Andre Turrentine, he's exhausted his eligibility. Idris Farouk is an underclassman currently on roster. Jalen McMurray has exhausted his eligibility. He was a star player. Boo Carter, of course, was a star player. He was dismissed. Sidney Walton is a returning option. Caleb Beasley was before entering the transfer portal. He did that on Monday night. And Tennessee, of course, said goodbye to Jamal McCoy, Colton Hood, and Ricky Gibson. Hood and McCoy, who are declaring for the NFL draft, and Ricky Gibson, who is now at College Station, Texas A&M, after entering the transfer portal. So much needed for that revamped Tennessee secondary, and that is TJ Metcalf and somebody that I think can really, really help Tennessee. So you had to commit on Monday night. You had to commit on Tuesday morning. Who could be next? Tennessee still needs a quarterback. We discussed that ad nauseum. We'll discuss more on that in segment number 3. Tennessee still needs a running back. Tennessee would like to add a defensive tackle. If an end wants to come in, come on, but a tackle for sure. And Tennessee needs to add a cornerback for sure. And then, I would add anywhere from 2 to 3 more secondary guys. But a cornerback is a must. Tennessee has got to add that for sure. All right, when we come back, let's take a look at the defensive positions, defensive line, linebacker, secondary. Who is here? Who is gone? Who is coming in? What do those numbers look like? All that and more is coming up next as we continue on here. It is your Wednesday Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on all the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on bets you already feel good about. You ride with your favorite when you think the team controls the matchup. You can take the shot at an underdog when you feel an upset is coming, or you could build a parlay around these players and moments when you think that those moments decide the game. Then you apply the profit boost and you go for even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays you out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on all the action all playoff long, plus basketball season as well. College basketball, game last night, game coming up against Kentucky on Saturday. You can get those futures in as well. All that and more on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff boost every game day. Again, that's over at FanDuel. So I thought it'd be fitting, since Tennessee continues to get defensive transfer portal additions, and remember the needs and the holes on the roster were primarily on the defensive side of the football. Tennessee was always going to try to get a running back, will and must get a quarterback. Again, you need 3 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster. And, entering portal season, an offensive lineman, kind of a luxury, probably wanted a swing guy, but that turned into a must whenever you had your starter starting in and backup left tackle enter the transfer portal. So an offensive tackle turned it into a necessity, of course. And but the primary objective was really strengthening the defensive side of the football, and that's what Tennessee's been doing. And again, Jordan Norman, edge rusher from Tulane, he jumped in the boat with Tennessee on Monday night, and then it was TJ Metcalf of Michigan, the safety, that committed to Tennessee publicly on Tuesday morning. So that brings me to, well, what does each room look like? Okay, well, let's look at the defensive line. Well, first of all, Tennessee's got 12 players from the portal right now. That includes specialist kicker Cooper Renvier from Louisville, long snapper Blake Howard from Eastern Kentucky, and Gavin Freeman, who's going to be Tennessee's return specialist and can play some wide receiver as well. You have 12 players from the portal, counting those 3 specialists, and Tennessee's had like 20-plus players. I think the count's at maybe 25, 26, but you got to remember that includes walk-ons, and that also includes 2 players specifically that weren't on Tennessee's roster for the 2025 season. I believe Aiden Bussell is counted in that group. I think Trevor Duncan is counted in that group. And, of course, Boo Carter is counted in that group as well, but he was dismissed in November, October, whenever it was. So the number looks large, but you got to take into account 3 people that weren't a part of things this year, Boo Carter for half the time, and then walk-ons as well. But that's kind of where Tennessee's standing right now. And you look at the defensive line, Tennessee right now, again, things can change by the minute, but right now Tennessee has retained 8 scholarship players from the defensive line. 7 scholarship players have departed from the defensive line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, let me make that edit. Looking at the story here for myself that I'm going to write that's going out on VolQuest, so I'm just kind of taking some notes from that. And Tennessee's added 3 via the transfer portal. Those players that have been retained so far, Christian Gass, a Leo-type body, and right now he's the only Leo in the room. Well, I guess since they've gotten the commitments from Chaz Coleman and Jordan Norman, that's not accurate anymore. But, Christian Gass is the only one that's left because, I'll get to that in a moment, the entire Leo room left or, is going to the NFL. Tyree Weathersby, who's been a strong side defensive end, I think he'll fit in well in this defense. Marion Dye, I think, will be great in this defense. Marion Dye and David Hobbs are very intriguing to me because I think they can play end or tackle in this system, but primarily on the outside, solidifying the ends. Nathan Robinson in the interior, Ethan Utley, Isaiah Campbell, and Charles House, all those defensive tackles that have been retained on the roster. Players who have departed the defensive line to this point. Caleb Herring, transfer portal. Jordan Ross, of course, transfer portal, and he's landed at LSU. Kellen Lindstrom, Emmanuel Okoye, those are all Leos, and I haven't even mentioned Joshua Josephs yet, who's exhausted his eligibility and going to the NFL draft. So that is 5 Leo bodies who have been taken out of that room. Man, it's wild to think about. Defensive end Jaden Lofton, who I think landed at Nebraska. Josh Snell, defensive tackle, who I think landed at UCF. And Jamal Wallace, defensive tackle. Those are the players who have departed the defensive line room. And, of course, Tennessee's added Chaz Coleman, edge player, Jordan Norman, edge player, and Xavier Gilliam, defensive tackle. Gilliam and Coleman from Penn State. So clearly there's more work to do. Tennessee needs another defensive tackle in the worst way. And if another edge wants to come on. But Tennessee's got at least one more to add to the defensive line. At linebacker, it's pretty much even Stevens. Unless I'm forgetting anybody, Tennessee's retaining 6, 1 left, and you're bringing in 1. So it looks like Jordan Burns, Jaden Harmon, Edwin Spillman, Jeremiah Thielander, Jaden Perlotti, and Ben Bolton are retained, and I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. Brendan Ains left via the transfer portal, and Amari Campbell from Penn State, who's going to be the quarterback of the defense, very productive player, and a guy that I think is the most impactful defensive player, okay, potentially for Tennessee, came into this room. So linebackers kind of, even Stevens in that regard, and maybe it's because William Inge was retained and he's the linebackers coach. I think that could have something to do with it for sure, but I'm excited to see what these linebackers look like with some bigger defensive bodies out there on the edge to squeeze the edge, to set the edge, to squeeze the wash down blocks and all that. I'm excited to see if Edwin Spillman can take that next step, and of course, I think all eyes are always on Jaden Perlotti as well. And then that takes us to the secondary, where we know there's been a lot going on. Man, oh man, oh man. Okay, so by my count, Tennessee's had 7 defensive backs retained. And I know I'm probably forgetting somebody, and I do apologize. That's why I've got to have somebody look this over before it's published. But Ty Redmond, Trey Poteet, Tim Merritt, Idris Farouk, Dylan Lewis, and Sidney Walton at current standing are all retained on the roster. We'll see if any of those guys jump in before the portal closes. There's always chatter. But those guys are retained right now. That's 7. Players who have left the defensive backfield for Tennessee via the portal, 4. You have Ricky Gibson, Marcus Gorey Jr., Boo Carter, and of course he counts, right? And Caleb Beasley, who jumped in the portal on Monday night. And then there's been 4 players added so far. I think this could climb to maybe 7. Tennessee's got some work to do, but I think this could maybe climb to 7, or they would like it to climb to 7. But 5 for sure, and hopefully 6 or 7. It's Kayin Lee, the cornerback from Auburn, who has SEC starting experience. Quay Moss from Kansas State, who's going to be the star in this defense. DeJuan Lane from Penn State, who I just think the fact you got him, Anthony Poindexter, Jim Knowles. I mean, again, this is only going to help with the communication aspect and, really kind of accelerate the growth of this defense in year one. The fact that you got a quarterback on defense and Amari Campbell, your linebacker, your safety back there on the back end, and, of course, a couple of Penn State guys up front. And then you got TJ Metcalf, who's coming over from Michigan, as, we talked about earlier in segment number 1. A guy that's really talented, a guy that I think is just scratching the surface, even though he was honorable mention, Big Ten this past year. Very, very productive player. So 7 retained at the current standing, 4 departed to the portal, and 4 more added. And don't forget about the incoming freshman class as well for all these positions. Forgot to mention that for the other 2. Tennessee has 7 incoming freshmen: Joel Wyatt, Zayden Anderson, Javonte Smith, Joel Combe, Luke Thompson, KJ McClain, and Jamin Theodore are all signees to this class. And, a couple of those guys are going to have to be relied on. At linebacker, you're bringing in 2 guys who I think are phenomenal players: TJ White, Braden Rouse. Really excited to see what those guys are going to do at linebacker. And then, of course, up front, a big old class. And, some of these guys have to be counted on as well. Maybe not all of them, or certainly it won't be all of them. Maybe not most of them, but a couple of these guys will get some meaningful snaps, like Isaiah Campbell and really Ethan Utley did this year. Carter Gooden, Jordan Carter, Zach Groves, Hezekiah Harris, Darian Albert, J.J. Finch, Kedrick Golston II, Darrell Rivers, C.J. Edwards, and Quaz Simmons. Big ol' freshman class on the defensive line. So I'm excited. I think Tennessee has upgraded its personnel. Again, we'll see exactly what these guys look like when they go out there and play for sure. But Tennessee had some needs. Tennessee addressed those needs. And at current standing, this is what the defensive side of the football looks like position by position for the University of Tennessee. Could there be more? You hope. Could there be some more departures? We'll see. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We'll do this on the offensive side of the football, maybe on tomorrow's show. Is it time that we give Josh Heupel the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this quarterback conversation? I think the answer is yes. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. So I understand the frustration by many fans. I certainly understand the anxiousness because you see Kentucky got a quarterback, Texas Tech got a quarterback, Oregon got a quarterback, LSU got a quarterback, Miami's going to get a quarterback. Like, Virginia got a quarterback. Like, who's Tennessee's quarterback going to be? Like, I get it. And that's why new is always better. What up, Barney Stinson? You're always going to feel better with experience. You're always going to feel better when you know that this guy's done this and you see it on tape, or he's done this in the SEC, or he's started for X amount of years or X amount of games. That makes you feel better. There's always an uneasy feeling, uneasiness to a true freshman. And everybody can love Faison Brandon. I'm excited to see what Faison Brandon is going to do. I think he's got all the tools and intangibles in the world, man. I do. But again, he's never done it at this level. Will he be ready to roll game 1, week 1? I don't know. Is he, from a mental standpoint, in terms of processing the reads, communicating to his offense, reading going through his progressions, will he be far enough along mentally at this stage in his career to be ready game 1, week 1? What about George McIntyre? He's a year in, but he's doesn't have hardly any experience outside of a couple plays in mop-up duty. Where is he in that regard? Also, from a physical standpoint, both those guys are not, I think Faison's bigger than George McIntyre, but, how much weight can George McIntyre put on from here until kickoff? His stature right now is not the issue. It's the wear and tear of a Southeastern Conference season. I know Nico was clearly not a big guy, but Nico was bigger than George McIntyre. George McIntyre, I think right now is like 195, 197, somewhere around there. Nico was 210 when he started the Citrus Bowl a couple years ago. Didn't look it, but he was. But it's the wear and tear of a season. So, the Barney Stinson line of new is always better. That's why the transfer portal is so appealing, and that's why it's so frustrating when Tennessee misses out on Sam Levitt, or it turns out Tennessee really didn't push hard for Bo Perbula, or Tennessee wasn't willing to maybe go all in on Sorsby or whatever, and so I get all that. So regardless, doesn't matter if Faison Brandon's your starting quarterback next year, if George McIntyre is your starting quarterback next year. Tennessee has loads of talent on the roster right now at the quarterback position. But Tennessee will add a transfer portal quarterback no matter what, because you need 3 scholarship guys in the room. Right now, Joey Aguilar, you can't assume anything with him. Like you can't assume that he's going to be a part of things. You have to assume that he's not, and go out there and prepare as if Joey Aguilar will not get that waiver and will not get cleared to play an additional year of college football. And if he's cleared and that happens down the line, then great. I mean, that's awesome, right? What if that? I mean, you talk about a nice little Christmas in May. That was kind of like it was when he arrived on campus last year. Wasn't at the time, but it turned out to be. That would be a big-time get later on. But Tennessee has to add somebody no matter what, and that's why Tennessee will sign somebody from the transfer portal. Now, will that come from a quarterback in the transfer portal right now at the Power 4 level? I don't know of many that's left. I'm sure there are some. I don't have a list in front of me. A Division I quarterback at the Group of 5 that's currently in, maybe. Could Tennessee go down to the FCS level and get a quarterback? The Division II level, that's where Trinidad Chambliss came from. And I understand that there's not Trinidad's out there and there's not Joey Aguilar's out there. I mean, Chambliss had a fantastic year. Joey Aguilar led the SEC in passing this year. A success. Not everybody's out there like those 2 guys, but I think it's time we give Josh Heupel the benefit of the doubt. You look at what he's done with quarterbacks in this offense, okay? He did not recruit Hendon Hooker here. That was Jeremy Pruitt. But boy, that was hell of a parting gift out in Knoxville, right? From Jeremy Pruitt. You look at what Hendon Hooker did at his time at 3 years at Virginia Tech. Played in 6 games in 2018, 11 games in 2019, and 8 games in the COVID year of 2020. In 25 career games, 1 more than he played at Tennessee. At 25 career games at Virginia, Hendon Hooker threw for 2,894 yards. In 24 games at Tennessee across 2 seasons, Hendon Hooker threw for 6,080 yards. He completed passes at 63.1%. At Tennessee, he completed passes at 68.8%. Touchdowns. He threw 58 touchdowns in 24 games with Tennessee. He threw 22 touchdowns in 25 games at Virginia Tech. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I mean, Hendon Hooker was a match made in heaven. Now, he is the best that's been here for Josh Heupel. I recognize that, but let's go to some of the other ones, right? Joe Milton. Everybody wants to talk about how, Joe Milton can't hit a deep ball anymore, and Joe Milton's got an arm, but he throws it too hard, and Joe Milton is not accurate and all that. I hear you. There's limitations there, but he's a backup in the National Football League right now, and he was a 3,000-yard player for Tennessee in 2023, as was Hendon Hooker in 2022. He accumulated over 3,000 yards. Joe Milton accumulated over 3,000 yards. You had Joey Aguilar that accumulated over 3,000 yards. In fact, that he finished the year, I think, 3rd all-time in single-season all-purpose yards for Tennessee, which is pretty miraculous, even with the bowl game where he didn't do an awful lot. But you look at Joe Milton. Joe Milton in 3 years at Tennessee, played in 29 games. 3 years at Michigan, he played in 14 games. His 1 year as a starting quarterback for Tennessee, remember in 2022, he played in mop-up duty. He completed 64% of his pass, 971 yards, 10 touchdowns, no interceptions. Just throwing bombs to Squirrel White down there in 2022, if you remember. But as a full-time starter in 2023, remember how bad it felt like it was at the time? Joe Milton completed 64% of his passes. He threw for 2,813 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns. Let me look that up. That was 7 rushing touchdowns. He had 27 total touchdowns. Those numbers are not bad. And that's with Joe Milton that clearly had some limitations to his game. Okay, I'm not trying to say the offense was great that year, but those are some pretty good quarterback numbers. Look at Nico Iamaleava last year as a redshirt freshman starter for Tennessee. I understand the deep ball was problematic, and I understand Tennessee had a run game and a defense to rely on, right? But still look at Nico, and I'm not trying to act like these numbers are all world, and I thought he was going to take a step coming back for another year. I was on that this time last year, but ultimately he goes to UCLA. But in 2024 at Tennessee, Nico threw for 2,616 yards, okay? 19 touchdowns, 5 picks. He completed passes at 63.8%. He rushed for almost 400 yards with 3 more touchdowns. Look at what he did at UCLA this year. And I know it's a train wreck there, and I get it with the coaching change and all that, but boy, oh boy. He threw for 1,928 yards, okay? 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He ran it more. He ran it for over 500 yards this year with 4 rushing touchdowns, but clearly throwing the football was a different story. And so I say all this to say, and you look at what he did with Dylan Gabriel, and you look at what he did with Drew Lock, and you look at what he did with, a lot of these other quarterbacks throughout his tenure. Josh Heupel knows quarterbacks. Joey Halsey's done a pretty good job quarterbacking. Now, we can have the conversation on should he relinquish play calling duty to focus on game management and clock management. Okay, we can talk about that. But in terms of knowing offense, knowing quarterbacks, Joey Halsey as well, knowing quarterbacks, working with quarterbacks, Josh Heupel's earned the benefit of the doubt. So, again, I'm not saying the portal strategy has been perfect. They've made up ground. They've done a great job. They've rebounded nicely, right? I'm not saying the approach to the quarterback has been done correctly. They need to bring more guys to campus. They needed to work to get guys to campus a lot earlier in the process. They needed to bring more quarterbacks on campus, okay? There's a lot of things we can nitpick and poke holes through right now. But regardless of who is the quarterback for Tennessee next year, I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt in terms of Josh Heupel because of what he's done with Joe Milton, who is a backup quarterback in the National Football League, with what he did with Hendon Hooker after coming over from Virginia Tech and really not wowing anybody, okay? What he did with Nico Iamaleava, getting him ready to lead a team to a college football playoff in 2024. Yes, I understand it was the defense in the run game, but Nico was still your starting quarterback as a true freshman, as a redshirt freshman. And then seeing what he did this year with Joey Aguilar. I didn't even get to Joey Aguilar, but already exited out of the fold there. We know he led the SEC in passing yards in the regular season. He threw for 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions and had some rushing yards as well. Quarterback rating was up there, pretty high in the conference. So, yeah, I think that's why I'm excited to where, like, if Tennessee is to get a quarterback from a lower level, don't freak out. Let's see what Josh Heupel can do there. I think it'll be interesting. So regardless, again, I'm not defending all the actions from the portal, but I am just saying in terms of quarterback, whether that's someone from the portal, someone that hasn't jumped in the portal yet from a Power 4, from a big time D1, or whether it's somebody from a lower level, or if it's George McIntyre or Faison Brandon. I think Josh Heupel might have earned the benefit of the doubt in that regard. All right, when we come back, the latest happenings in the Tennessee and the transfer portal. We'll reset the offensive board. We'll go position group by position group, kind of like what we did defensively here today. If Tennessee will have any more commits, we'll break it all down on tomorrow's Locked On Vols. Thank you guys so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.